Princess Zara High of the Veltharian Empire stood on the observation deck of her family's flagship, watching the blue-green planet Earth shrink in the distance. Her 4 arms were folded in a gesture that humans might mistake for impatience, but among her people it meant deep contemplation. The crystalline scales along her neck shimmered with a soft purple hue, indicating her mixed emotions about the journey ahead. "Still having doubts about your choice, sister?" came a familiar voice behind her. Zarahai turned to see her brother, Prince Kelvar, approaching with his usual confident stride. Unlike her, his scales glowed a steady gold, the color of certainty and royal pride. "Not doubts," she replied, her voice carrying the musical quality typical of their species. "Curiosity. The humans are fascinating." Kelvar snorted, a sound that resonated through his throat chambers. "Fascinating is one word for them. Primitive is another. They've barely mastered space travel, and their military technology is laughable compared to ours. I still don't understand why Father agreed to this alliance through marriage." Zarahai's scales flickered with mild annoyance. "Because, dear brother, sometimes wisdom comes in unexpected packages. The humans have something we lack." "And what's that?" "The ability to destroy their own planet through pollution and war." "Adaptability," Zarahai said firmly. "In just a few thousand years, they've gone from living in caves to traveling between stars. Our empire took 50,000 years to achieve the same progress. There's something special about them, something we don't understand yet." Kelvar's scales dimmed slightly, indicating skepticism. "Special enough to marry one of them?" Zarahai thought of Marcus Chen, the human diplomat she had chosen as her husband. He was unlike any being she had ever encountered. Where Veltharian males were tall, imposing, and aggressive in their courtship displays, Marcus was quiet, thoughtful, and surprisingly gentle. He stood barely to her shoulder in height, had only 2 arms, and possessed none of the natural armor plating that made Veltharian warriors so formidable. Yet something about him intrigued her. During the 3 months of negotiations between their peoples, she had watched him carefully. While her father's generals boasted of their military might and her advisors flaunted their technological superiority, Marcus had simply listened, learned, and asked questions that revealed a depth of understanding that surprised everyone. "He's not what you'd expect," she admitted. "When he smiles, his whole face changes. It's endearing." "Endearing," Kelvar repeated with disgust. "Zarahai, you're the crown princess of the most powerful empire in this quadrant of the galaxy. You could have chosen from 1,000 Veltharian nobles, each one stronger and more capable than this human. Instead, you pick someone who looks like he'd break if you hugged him too hard." Zarahai's scales flashed with amusement. "Actually, I tested that theory. He's sturdier than he appears." The memory made her smile. During their first formal meeting, she had accidentally knocked him over while gesturing enthusiastically about a diplomatic point. Instead of showing fear or anger, Marcus had simply laughed and said, "I guess I need to work on my balance." The lack of wounded pride or intimidation had shocked her. Veltharian males would have challenged her to combat for the perceived slight. Their ship, the Void Dancer, was one of the most advanced vessels in the Veltharian fleet. It stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull covered in the same crystalline technology that powered their civilization. The ship could destroy a planet if necessary, or reshape matter at the molecular level for peaceful construction. To the humans, it probably seemed like magic. Marcus had toured the ship during the negotiation period, and his reactions had been unexpected. Instead of the fear or overwhelming awe she had anticipated, he had shown genuine curiosity. He asked about the crystalline matrices, wanted to understand how their gravity manipulation worked, and even suggested improvements to their waste recycling systems that their engineers later admitted were quite clever. The human delegation is aboard ship, Kelvar reminded her, including your husband-to-be. Shouldn't you be preparing for the ceremony instead of stargazing? Zarahai sighed, a sound that created harmonic resonances through her throat chambers. I suppose I should. Have you spoken with Marcus since we departed Earth? Briefly. Kelvar's scales darkened to a deep blue, indicating discomfort. He's polite. Too polite, if you ask me. When I told him about our military conquests, he just nodded and asked about our agricultural systems instead. It's unnatural. Maybe he's just not impressed by violence. Everyone should be impressed by superior firepower, Kelvar stated firmly. It's the foundation of respect among civilized species. Zarahai turned away from the viewport and began walking toward the royal quarters. Her brother fell into step beside her, his heavy footsteps echoing through the crystalline corridors. The ship's walls displayed a gentle, pulsing light that responded to their presence, a technology so advanced that humans still thought of it as miraculous. As they walked, they passed members of the human delegation. The humans looked small and fragile compared to the Veltharian crew, but Zarahai noticed they didn't seem intimidated. Ambassador Sarah Rodriguez nodded politely to them, while Dr. James Wright was deep in conversation with one of their scientists about quantum mechanics. The humans adapted quickly, she observed, perhaps too quickly. There's something else about him, Zarahai said as they reached her quarters. Marcus? What now? He doesn't react to our technology the way other species do. Most beings we encounter either cower in fear or become obsessively envious. Marcus just accepts it, as if he expected us to have such capabilities. Kelvar's scales shifted to orange, indicating confusion. That makes no sense. Their most advanced ships are basically metal tubes with chemical rockets. Our simplest scout craft could defeat their entire space force without effort. I know, but watch his eyes when he looks at our systems. It's not ignorance or fear, it's calculation. He's figuring out how everything works. They paused outside her quarters, where the door recognized her biological signature and dissolved into crystalline particles that reformed behind them. The room beyond was vast by ship standards, decorated with flowing sculptures that shifted color based on her mood. Zarahai, Kelvar said seriously, his scales now showing the deep red of concern. Are you certain about this alliance? The Council of Generals isn't convinced that humanity offers anything we truly need. Some are suggesting we simply take what we want from Earth and be done with it. Zarahai's scales flashed white with anger. And prove that we're just another species of conquerors? Father agreed to this marriage because he sees the same potential in humanity that I do. They're not just another primitive species to be dominated. But what if you're wrong? What if they really are as harmless as they appear? Before Zarahai could answer, her personal communicator chimed with Marcus's voice. Even through the translation matrix, she could hear the warmth in his tone. Zarahai, I hope I'm not disturbing you. I wanted to thank you for arranging the tour of your agricultural deck. Your hydroponic systems are incredibly efficient. I had some ideas about possible improvements if you're interested. Kelvar's eyes widened. He wants to improve our systems? The arrogance of this creature. But Zarahai was smiling. What kind of improvements, Marcus? Well, I noticed you're using a standard crystalline matrix for nutrient distribution, but if you introduced a secondary cascade system with variable frequency modulation, you could increase yield by approximately 30% while reducing power consumption. I sketched out some preliminary calculations if you'd like to see them. There was a long silence. Kelvar's scales had gone completely gray, indicating shock. Their agricultural systems were among the most advanced in the known galaxy, refined over millennia of development. I would very much like to see your calculations, Zarahai managed. Excellent. I'll have them ready for our dinner tonight. Oh, and I should mention, I've been talking with your chief engineer about your faster-than-light drive. I think there might be a way to reduce the power requirements for dimensional folding by introducing a harmonic resonance buffer. But we can discuss that later. The communication ended, leaving the royal siblings in stunned silence. Did he just, Kelvar began, suggest improvements to our most advanced technologies? Yes, he did. Zarahai's scales were now cycling through a rainbow of colors as she processed various emotions. That's impossible. Our scientists have spent thousands of years perfecting those systems. Maybe that's the problem, Zarahai mused. Maybe we've become too set in our ways. Marcus has only been studying our technology for 3 months, and he's seeing things we've missed because we're too close to the problems. Kelvar began pacing, his scales shifting between orange confusion and red concern. This changes things, sister. If the humans can improve our technology, if they can understand and enhance systems we consider perfected, then they're either much more intelligent than we assumed or... Zarahai paused, a new thought forming. Or what? Or their technology is far more advanced than they're showing us. Think about it, Kelvar. What if Earth isn't as primitive as it appears? What if they're deliberately presenting themselves as harmless? The idea hung between them like a dangerous revelation. The Veltharian Empire had conquered dozens of species, always following the same pattern. Assess the threat level, establish superiority, demand submission or alliance. But they had never encountered a species that seemed so cooperative while simultaneously demonstrating such unexpected capabilities. You think they're hiding their true abilities? Kelvar asked. I think, Zarahai said slowly, that we may have underestimated humanity. Severely. That evening, Zarahai made her way to the ship's formal dining hall, where dinner had been arranged for both delegations. The room was impressive even by Veltharian standards, with walls that displayed real-time images of the stellar formations they were passing through. The table itself was carved from a single piece of crystallized dark matter, a material so rare that it was usually reserved for the Emperor's personal use. Marcus was already there, studying one of the stellar displays with obvious fascination. He had dressed in what the humans called formal wear, though to Zarahai's eyes, the simple black clothing seemed almost primitive compared to the flowing, color-shifting garments of her people. "The Horsehead Nebula," he said without turning around. "I've seen images of it from Earth telescopes, but this perspective is incredible. You can actually see the stellar formation processes in real time. Most beings find our dining hall's decorations impressive for their artistic value," Zarahai observed. "You're looking at them like scientific data." Marcus turned and smiled, that expression that somehow transformed his entire face. Beauty and science aren't mutually exclusive. In fact, I'd argue that understanding how something works makes it even more beautiful. As they sat down to eat, Marcus presented his calculations about the agricultural improvements. Zarahai studied the human numerical notations, which their translation computers converted into Veltharian mathematical concepts. The work was not only correct, but elegant in its simplicity. "How did you determine the optimal frequency modulations?" she asked. "Pattern recognition, mostly," Marcus replied, tasting the synthesized foods their cuisine processors had created based on human nutritional requirements. "Your systems are incredibly sophisticated, but they follow logical principles. Once I understood the underlying mathematics, it was just a matter of finding the resonance points where efficiency peaks." "Just a matter," Zarahai repeated. "Marcus, our best engineers have been working on agricultural optimization for centuries." "Sometimes fresh perspective helps," he said modestly. "On Earth we have a saying, you can't see the forest for the trees. It means that sometimes being too close to a problem prevents you from seeing obvious solutions." As the meal progressed, other members of both delegations joined them. Zarahai watched the interactions carefully. The humans mixed easily with her people, showing neither excessive deference nor inappropriate familiarity. They asked intelligent questions, offered thoughtful observations, and seemed genuinely interested in learning about Veltharian culture. But there was something else, she noticed. Whenever technical discussions arose, the humans displayed a level of understanding that seemed impossible, given their supposedly primitive technology. Dr. Wright casually discussed quantum mechanics with their chief physicist, while Ambassador Rodriguez demonstrated surprising knowledge about interstellar politics and military strategy. "Tell me about Earth's defenses," she asked Marcus during a quiet moment. His expression didn't change, but she noticed a slight tension around his eyes. "What would you like to know?" "Your planet appears to have minimal orbital defenses, no significant space navy. How do you protect yourselves from species like us?" Marcus smiled again, but this time it didn't reach his eyes. "Earth's defenses are adequate for our needs." "Against what threats? Your species has never encountered hostile aliens before our arrival." "True," Marcus agreed. "But we've encountered hostile humans plenty of times. We've learned to be prepared for unexpected situations." Before Zarahai could pursue this line of questioning further, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The crystalline walls flashed red and her personal communicator crackled with urgent reports. "Princess, we have a problem," came her father's voice. "A draconian attack fleet just emerged from hyperspace. They're demanding our immediate surrender." The dining hall fell silent. The Draconians were one of the few species that actively challenged Veltharian dominance, with technology nearly equal to their own and a reputation for ruthless aggression. "How many ships?" Zarahai asked, her scales automatically shifting to combat readiness colors. 12 heavy cruisers and a battleship. We're outnumbered 3-1. Kelvar's voice joined the communication. "Sister, we should prepare for battle. The Void Dancer is powerful, but against those odds..." Zarahai looked around the dining hall. Her people were showing signs of combat stress, scales shifting to aggressive reds and defensive blues. The humans, however, remained remarkably calm. Marcus was still eating, though she noticed his attention was now focused on something beyond the stellar displays. "Marcus," she said quietly, "are you concerned about the approaching battle?" He looked at her with those strange human eyes, and for just a moment she thought she saw something vast and dangerous hiding behind his gentle expression. "Should I be?" he asked simply. Before she could answer, the ship shuddered as the first draconian weapons found their target. The real test of humanity was about to begin, though Zarahai was beginning to suspect that it wouldn't be humanity that was tested. The Void Dancer shook again, more violently this time. Emergency lights bathed the dining hall in harsh white illumination as the ship's defensive systems engaged. Through the transparent walls, they could see the distinctive angular shapes of draconian warships approaching, their hulls bristling with weapon arrays. "All personnel to emergency stations," came the ship-wide announcement. "This is not a drill." As Veltharians scrambled to their assigned positions, Zarahai noticed that the humans remained seated, apparently unconcerned by the approaching battle. Marcus was now studying his personal communication device, though she couldn't see what information it displayed. "Perhaps," Marcus said conversationally, "it would be best if the human delegation remained here while your people handle the situation." Something in his tone made Zarahai's scales shift to cautious yellow. There was a quality to his voice she had never heard before, a subtle confidence that seemed completely at odds with his species' apparent helplessness. The battle was about to reveal truths that would change everything. The Void Dancer lurched violently as another draconian energy blast struck its shields. Zarahai watched the tactical displays with growing concern as the enemy fleet moved into attack formation. 12 heavy cruisers flanked their massive battleship, each vessel bristling with weapons that could crack a planet's crust. "Shield strength at 60% and falling," reported the ship's tactical officer, her scales flickering between orange anxiety and blue determination. "Enemy vessels are maintaining optimal firing distance." Emperor Thalvar's voice crackled through the communication system from the bridge. "All civilian personnel to emergency shelters immediately. Combat crews to battle stations." Zarahai stood, her 4 arms moving in the traditional gesture of command authority. "Marcus, Ambassador Rodriguez, Dr. Wright, please follow my security detail to the protected areas of the ship." But Marcus remained seated, his expression thoughtful as he continued to study his personal device. The other humans showed no signs of panic either, though they were clearly paying attention to the developing situation. "That won't be necessary," Marcus said quietly. "I beg your pardon?" Zarahai's scales flashed with confusion. "The emergency shelter. We'll be fine here." Marcus looked up from his device, and again Zarahai caught that glimpse of something deep and calculating behind his gentle brown eyes. "Though you might want to contact your father and suggest he open a communication channel with the Draconian commander." Before Zarahai could ask what he meant, the ship shuddered again. This time the lights flickered, and she could hear the distant sound of hull stress alarms. The Draconians were not known for taking prisoners. "Marcus, with respect, you don't understand the situation. The Draconians have declared war on our convoy. They intend to destroy this ship and everyone aboard it. This is not a diplomatic negotiation." "Isn't it?" Marcus stood and walked to one of the transparent walls, gazing out at the attacking fleet. "Tell me, what exactly do the Draconians want?" Kelvar's voice came through the communicator as he responded from his position at the weapons station. "They want to capture our ship's technology and eliminate potential allies of our empire. Standard Draconian tactics." "But they offered terms for surrender," Marcus pointed out. "That suggests they believe they have something to gain beyond simple destruction." The ship bucked again, and Zarahai could see energy discharges lighting up the space around them as their defensive systems fought back against the Draconian assault. Her people were among the finest warriors in the galaxy, but they were severely outnumbered. "Surrender to Draconians means slavery or death," she explained. "They don't honor treaties or show mercy to defeated enemies." "Ah," Marcus said, his tone suggesting he was filing away this information. "In that case, perhaps more direct action is warranted." He touched something on his device, and suddenly, Dr. Wright and Ambassador Rodriguez were standing as well. The change in their demeanor was subtle but unmistakable. Where before they had seemed like curious, slightly overwhelmed civilians, now they carried themselves with the quiet confidence of people who knew exactly what they were doing. "Ambassador Rodriguez," Marcus said formally, "please contact Earth Command and request immediate tactical support." "Already done," Rodriguez replied, checking her own device. "Response teams are en route. Estimated arrival in 17 minutes. Zarahai stared at them. "Response teams? From Earth? That's impossible. The nearest human ship is days away from our position." Dr. Wright smiled, and it was nothing like Marcus's warm, gentle expressions. This smile held secrets and promises of consequences. "Princess, with all due respect, you might have some misconceptions about human capabilities." The ship's alarms suddenly changed tone, shifting from combat alerts to proximity warnings. New contacts were appearing on the edge of their sensor range, approaching at velocities that should have been impossible for human technology. "Unknown vessels detected," came the report from the bridge. "Configuration appears to be human, but the energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases." Through the transparent walls, Zarahai could see new stars appearing in the darkness, growing brighter as they approached. But they weren't stars at all. They were ships, moving faster than anything she had ever seen, leaving trails of disturbed space-time in their wake. "How?" she whispered. "The same way we've always survived," Marcus replied, his gentle demeanor completely gone now. "By being underestimated." The human ships swept into the battle zone with devastating precision. There were only 5 of them, each smaller than a draconian cruiser, but their technology was clearly far beyond anything the galaxy had seen. They moved through space like dancers, their hulls rippling with energy patterns that seemed to bend reality around them. The lead ship fired a single beam at the draconian battleship. The massive vessel, which could have destroyed a moon, simply ceased to exist. Not exploded, not broken apart, but vanished as if it had never been there at all. "Temporal displacement weapon," Dr. Wright explained casually. "We moved their battleship approximately 3 seconds into the past. Unfortunately for them, they were occupying the same space as an asteroid when they arrived." The draconian fleet, faced with technology they couldn't comprehend, attempted to flee. It was too late. The human ships had surrounded them with a movement pattern that defied every law of physics Zara High understood. Space itself seemed to fold around the enemy vessels, trapping them in gravitational wells that shouldn't have been possible to generate. "This is Commander Sarah Mitchell of the UES Prometheus," came a new voice through their communication system. "Draconian vessels, you have attacked a human diplomatic mission. Withdraw immediately or face consequences." The Draconian commander's response was predictably aggressive. "Human primitives, you cannot threaten the might of the Draconian Empire. We will reduce your pathetic ships to space dust." "Wrong answer," Commander Mitchell replied. What happened next redefined Zara High's understanding of warfare. The human ships didn't fire conventional weapons. Instead, they seemed to reach out with invisible forces and simply turn off the draconian vessels. Engines stopped, weapons powered down, and life support systems failed simultaneously across the entire enemy fleet. "Quantum disruption field," Marcus explained, watching Zara High's shocked expression. "We're temporarily disconnecting their technology from the fundamental forces that make it work. They're not destroyed, just paused." "Impossible," Zara High breathed. "The energy requirements alone are manageable once you understand how to tap into zero-point vacuum energy," Dr. Wright added. "We've been working on that particular problem for about 60 years now." The tactical displays showed the draconian ships drifting helplessly, their crews undoubtedly alive but completely powerless. The human vessels moved among them like shepherds, among paralyzed wolves, ensuring none could reactivate their systems. "Princess Zara High," came Commander Mitchell's voice, "this is a formal demonstration of Earth's commitment to protecting our diplomatic missions. Please inform your father that the threat has been neutralized." Zara High found her voice with difficulty. "Commander Mitchell, on behalf of the Veltharian Empire, I thank you for your assistance." "No thanks necessary, Your Highness. Marcus and his team are under Earth's protection. We take attacks on our people very seriously." As the communication ended, Zara High turned to stare at Marcus. The gentle, thoughtful human she had married was still there, but now she could see the layers beneath. The careful questions about their technology, the modest suggestions for improvements, the calm acceptance of their superior capabilities, all of it took on new meaning. "You've been studying us," she said. "Of course," Marcus replied. "Just as you've been studying us. The difference is we've been at it longer." "How long?" Ambassador Rodriguez answered. "About 200 years. Ever since we detected the first Veltharian scout ships at the edge of our solar system." "That's impossible. Our scouts reported that Earth showed no signs of advanced technology when they arrived." "Because we didn't want them to see it," Dr. Wright said simply. "Your people have a tendency to conquer anything they perceive as weaker than themselves. We decided it would be better to let you think we were primitive while we learned about you." The ship's communication system crackled with her father's voice. "Zara High, report to the bridge immediately. We need to discuss these developments." As they made their way through the ship's corridors, Zara High's mind raced with implications. The humans had been watching them for 2 centuries, learning their technology, understanding their culture, all while presenting a facade of primitive helplessness. And they had done it so well that the most advanced intelligence networks in the galaxy had been completely fooled. "The agricultural improvements you suggested," she said to Marcus as they walked. "Minor optimizations based on technologies we developed decades ago. We've been growing food in enclosed systems since we started colonizing other planets." "Other planets?" Zara High stopped walking. "How many worlds do humans control?" Marcus and his companions exchanged glances. "That's classified," Ambassador Rodriguez said carefully. "But let's just say that Earth isn't our only inhabited world." When they reached the bridge, Emperor Thalvar was waiting with his senior staff. The Emperor's scales were cycling through a complex pattern of colors that indicated he was processing multiple conflicting emotions simultaneously. Behind him, the tactical displays showed the human ships maintaining their positions around the disabled Draconian fleet. "Marcus Chen," the Emperor said formally. "I believe explanations are in order." "Of course, Your Majesty," Marcus replied with the same respectful tone he had always used. "What would you like to know?" "Start with why Earth's most primitive species just demonstrated technology that surpasses our own." Marcus considered this for a moment. "With respect, Your Majesty, you never asked about our capabilities. You assumed them based on what we allowed you to see. You deliberately deceived us?" "We protected ourselves," Ambassador Rodriguez interjected. "Your empire has a history of conquest. Species that appear weak get subjugated. Species that appear strong get destroyed as threats. We chose a third option. Appear harmless while building superior defenses," Dr. Wright added. "It's worked quite well for us." Emperor Thalvar's scales shifted to the deep blue of careful consideration. "How many species know of humanity's true capabilities?" "Currently, you're the second," Marcus said. "The first was a species called the Hegemony that tried to invade Earth about 50 years ago. What happened to them?" "They're still around," Dr. Wright said with another of those cold smiles. "But they're much more polite now. Amazing how reasonable people become when they realize they're not the dominant species in the galaxy." Kelvar, who had been silent during this exchange, finally spoke. "Father, what does this mean for our alliance?" "That depends," the Emperor said, looking directly at Marcus. "What does humanity truly want from this marriage agreement?" Marcus looked at Zara High before answering, and for a moment his expression softened back to the gentle demeanor she had fallen in love with. "The same thing we always wanted, Your Majesty. Peace, cooperation, and mutual respect between our peoples. The only thing that's changed is that now you understand we're negotiating from a position of equality rather than weakness." "Equality," the Emperor repeated. "Yet your ships just disabled an entire Draconian fleet without firing a shot." "The same way your ships could destroy most other species' fleets without effort," Ambassador Rodriguez pointed out. "Power doesn't preclude diplomacy, Your Majesty. In fact, we find that negotiations tend to be more honest when both sides know exactly what the other is capable of." Through the bridge's main viewer, they could see the human ships beginning to withdraw. The Draconian vessels remained drifting helplessly, their crews presumably alive, but learning some harsh truths about the balance of power in the galaxy. "Will those ships recover?" Zara High asked. "In about 6 hours," Marcus confirmed. "The quantum disruption effect is temporary. By the time they're functional again, we'll be long gone. And they'll carry word back to their empire that humanity is not to be trifled with," Dr. Wright added with satisfaction. Emperor Thalvar was quiet for a long moment, his scales settling into the golden color of deep thought. Finally, he spoke. Marcus Chen, on behalf of the Veltharian Empire, I formally acknowledge that our previous assessment of humanity was incomplete. This alliance will proceed as originally planned, but perhaps we should discuss some modifications to the terms. I'm listening, Your Majesty. Full technological exchange, mutual defense agreements, and perhaps most importantly, regular communication channels so that we avoid any future misunderstandings about capabilities. Marcus smiled, and this time it was his genuine, warm expression rather than the diplomatic mask he sometimes wore. I think those terms would be very acceptable to Earth Command. As the bridge crew began implementing new protocols and the immediate crisis passed, Zarahai found herself studying her husband with new eyes. The gentle, thoughtful human was still there, but now she understood that beneath that facade lay the representative of a species that had quietly become one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. "There's something I need to ask," she said to Marcus privately. "Of course. Did you really fall in love with me, or was this all part of some elaborate human strategy?" Marcus took her hands in his smaller, seemingly fragile ones. "Zarahai, everything I've told you about my feelings is true, but I'd be lying if I said the marriage wasn't also strategically important. Sometimes the best alliances are built on genuine affection. And if I had refused your proposal? Then we would have found another way to establish peaceful relations," he said honestly. "But I'm very glad you didn't refuse. Whatever else this marriage represents politically, personally, it's the best thing that's ever happened to me." Looking into his eyes, Zarahai realized that this, at least, was completely sincere. The revelation of humanity's hidden power changed many things, but it didn't change the fact that she had chosen well. If anything, knowing that Marcus came from a position of strength rather than weakness made his gentle nature even more attractive. The human ships finished their withdrawal, disappearing into hyperspace as quickly as they had arrived. The Draconian fleet continued to drift, a reminder that the galaxy had just become a much more complex place. As they prepared to continue their journey to the Veltharian homeworld, Zarahai reflected on what this meant for the future. Humanity had revealed its hand, at least partially. The question now was how the rest of the galaxy would reek. 3 weeks after the Draconian incident, Princess Zarahai stood in the grand throne room of the Veltharian Imperial Palace, watching her father address the assembled council of nobles. The massive chamber, carved from a single crystal formation that rose from the planet's core, hummed with nervous energy as scales throughout the room flickered between colors of anxiety, anger, and disbelief. "The evidence is irrefutable," Emperor Thalvar declared, his voice resonating through the crystalline walls. "Humanity possesses technology that surpasses our own in several key areas. Our alliance with Earth is no longer a matter of charity toward a primitive species, but a necessity for our continued prosperity." Lord General Kethamar, his scales a deep red of barely controlled fury, rose from his seat. "Your Majesty, with respect, how can we trust a species that has deceived us so thoroughly? They watched us for 2 centuries while pretending to be harmless savages. The same way any species earns trust," Marcus said from his position beside Zarahai. He had been granted the unprecedented honor of addressing the council directly, a privilege never before extended to an alien. "Through honest dealing moving forward." "Honest dealing?" Lord General Kethmar's scales flashed with contempt. "You lied to us about everything." "We protected ourselves," Marcus replied calmly. "And before you condemn that choice, consider what your empire typically does to species it considers weak. The Helani were reduced to slave laborers. The Kristek were strip-mined to extinction for their rare elements. The Vorath were simply wiped out for refusing to submit." The throne room fell silent. These were historical facts that no one could dispute, but they were rarely spoken aloud in formal settings. The Veltharian Empire's expansion had not been gentle. Marcus continued, his voice carrying easily through the vast space. Earth Command studied those cases carefully. We realized that in a galaxy dominated by species like yours, survival required either overwhelming military superiority or the appearance of harmlessness. We chose both. Both? This came from Admiral Zethara, her scales showing the orange of confused curiosity. We developed superior defensive capabilities while maintaining the illusion of primitiveness, Dr. Wright explained from his position in the human delegation area. When you arrived at Earth, what you saw was exactly what we wanted you to see. A small selection of our older, more recognizable technologies. Meanwhile, our real civilization remained hidden. Emperor Thalvar gestured for attention. The question now is not whether humanity deceived us, but how we move forward with complete information. Ambassador Rodriguez, please share the intelligence report. Ambassador Rodriguez stepped forward, carrying a crystalline data storage device. Your Majesty, at your request, Earth Command has prepared a comprehensive overview of human capabilities and territorial holdings. She activated the device, and a three-dimensional holographic map filled the center of the throne room. Zarahai heard gasps echo through the chamber as the display revealed the true extent of human civilization. Currently, humanity maintains active colonies on 473 worlds across 16 different star systems, Rodriguez announced. Our total population exceeds 50 billion individuals. Lord General Kethmar's scales went completely white with shock. That's larger than our empire. Our industrial capacity produces approximately 40% more manufactured goods annually than the Veltharian Empire, Dr. Wright added, though we focus primarily on defensive systems and civilian infrastructure rather than conquest fleets. How? Admiral Zethara demanded. Our reconnaissance shows no signs of this level of development. Marcus smiled with what Zarahai had learned to recognize as his diplomatic expression. Stealth technology, camouflaged installations, and very careful resource management. We've had centuries to perfect the art of remaining invisible. The holographic display shifted to show fleet compositions. Even Zarahai felt her breath catch at the numbers. The human space navy was 3 times the size of the Veltharian fleet, with ship designs that incorporated technologies their best scientists could barely comprehend. The vessels that assisted us during the Draconian attack, she asked, how do they rank among your military assets? They're patrol boats. Commander Mitchell's voice came through the communications system from her ship in orbit. Equivalent to what you might use for customs enforcement or piracy suppression. Another wave of shocked silence swept the chamber. Ships with technology that exceeded their most advanced warships were considered minor patrol vessels by human standards. This changes everything, whispered Counselor Velthar, her scales cycling through rapid color shifts as she processed the implications. It doesn't have to, Marcus said firmly. Earth has no interest in conquest or domination. We've proven that by remaining hidden for 2 centuries when we could have revealed ourselves as a major power at any time. Then what do you want? Emperor Thalvar asked directly. What we've always wanted, Ambassador Rodriguez replied. Peaceful coexistence, trade partnerships, and mutual protection agreements between civilized species. The marriage between Princess Zarahai and Marcus represents exactly the kind of alliance we hope to build throughout the galaxy. Lord General Kethmar's scales were still displaying hostile colors. And if we refuse? If we decide that humanity represents too great a threat to coexist with? The temperature in the throne room seemed to drop several degrees. Dr. Wright's expression hardened, and Ambassador Rodriguez's diplomatic smile acquired a distinctly predatory edge. That would be unwise, Marcus said quietly, "but ultimately your choice to make." "Is that a threat?" the general demanded. "It's a statement of fact." Commander Mitchell's voice cut through the chamber's communication system. "Humanity has survived and thrived for millennia by preparing for every possible contingency. We hope for friendship with the Veltharian Empire, but we're prepared for alternatives." Emperor Thalvar raised one of his hands for silence. "General Kethmar, your concerns are noted. However, I believe you're focusing on the wrong questions. The relevant issue is not whether humanity could be a threat, but whether they choose to be one." He turned to address Marcus directly. "In 2 centuries of secret observation, you could have infiltrated our government, sabotaged our technology, or simply attacked when we were unprepared. Instead, you revealed yourselves through a diplomatic marriage proposal and only showed your true capabilities when defending our mutual interests against draconian aggression." "That's correct, Your Majesty." "Then I see no reason why this alliance cannot proceed as originally planned, albeit with some modifications to reflect the true balance of power between our peoples." Over the following hours, they negotiated new treaty terms. The original agreement had been structured as a protective alliance with the powerful Veltharians offering guidance to the primitive humans. The revised version established equal partnership between 2 galactic powers, with provisions for technological exchange, mutual defense, and coordinated exploration of previously unknown regions. As the formal negotiations continued, Zarahai found herself observing Marcus with a mixture of admiration and lingering disbelief. He participated in discussions about resource allocation and fleet coordination with the casual competence of someone who had been managing interstellar politics for years, which, she realized, he probably had. "There's something else we should discuss," Dr. Wright said as the session began to wind down. "The Draconian Empire will not react well to their defeat. They're likely to seek allies among species who view humanity's emergence as a threat." "You're suggesting a wider conflict," Admiral Zethara observed. "We're suggesting preparation for one," Ambassador Rodriguez confirmed. "Intelligence reports indicate that at least 3 other major powers have been monitoring the situation. The hegemony, the collective, and the syndicate are all likely to view a human Veltharian alliance as a potential challenge to their territories." Emperor Thalvar's scales shifted to the deep blue of serious consideration. "Are we talking about a galactic war?" "Possibly," Marcus admitted, "though Earth's hope is that a strong alliance between our peoples might deter aggression rather than provoke it. Sometimes the best way to prevent a war is to make it clear that the potential aggressors would lose." The negotiations concluded with the signing of a new treaty that formally recognized humanity as a major galactic power and established the framework for unprecedented cooperation between their species. As the Council of Nobles dispersed to their various duties, Zarahai finally had a chance to speak privately with Marcus. They walked together through the palace's crystal gardens, where living light formations created constantly shifting patterns of beauty among the structured mineral growths. It was one of Zarahai's favorite places, and she had wanted to share it with Marcus since their arrival. "Do you really think there will be war?" she asked. "Almost certainly," Marcus replied with characteristic honesty. "The balance of power in this galaxy has been stable for centuries. Our emergence changes that, and change always provokes resistance from those who benefited from the previous system." "Are you afraid?" Marcus paused beside a formation of singing crystals, their harmonic resonances creating a melody that responded to their presence. "Of war? No. Earth has been preparing for galactic conflict since we first detected alien civilizations. Of losing you in that conflict? Yes. That terrifies me." Zarahai felt her scales shift to the soft pink of deep affection. "I can take care of myself, Marcus. I am a Veltharian warrior princess after all." "I know, but knowing something intellectually and accepting it emotionally are different things. He turned to face her, and she could see genuine vulnerability in his expression. I love you, Zarahai. Not just as a political alliance, but as a person. The thought of anything happening to you because of choices my people have made. She wrapped her 4 arms around him, careful of her natural strength. Nothing will happen to me. And if it did, that would be my choice to make, not your responsibility to bear. They stood together in silence for a moment, surrounded by the alien beauty of her world while contemplating a future that would likely be filled with challenges neither of them could fully anticipate. There's something I want to show you, Marcus said eventually. He activated his personal communication device, and suddenly the air around them filled with images. Not holographic projections like Veltharian technology created, but something far more sophisticated. The very atoms in the atmosphere were being manipulated to create 3-dimensional displays of impossible clarity and detail. This is Earth, he said, and Zarahai found herself looking at his homeworld as if she were floating in space above it. But this wasn't the primitive planet their scouts had reported. This was a world transformed by advanced technology into something breathtakingly beautiful. Cities floated in the clouds above pristine wilderness areas. Massive orbital installations formed rings of light around the planet. The oceans sparkled with underwater cities that stretched to the ocean floor. It was a vision of technological civilization in perfect harmony with natural environment. This is what we really are, Marcus continued. This is what we've built while the rest of the galaxy believed we were still struggling with basic spaceflight. The images shifted to show other human worlds, each one unique, but all displaying the same incredible fusion of technology and environmental preservation. Worlds where mountains floated freely in the sky, where entire continents existed as vertical cities that reached into space, where ocean worlds teemed with both natural life and artificial habitats. It's beautiful, Zarahai breathed. It's yours too now, Marcus said simply. As my wife, you have full citizenship in the Human Federation. All of these worlds are your home as much as mine. The implications hit her gradually. As princess of the Veltharian Empire, she had access to hundreds of worlds. But they were conquered territories, subjugated populations, resources to be exploited. What Marcus was showing her was something entirely different. A true interstellar civilization built on cooperation rather than domination. How do you govern so many worlds without conquest? She asked. Carefully, Marcus replied with a smile. Each world maintains its own government and culture. The Federation provides infrastructure, defense, and coordination, but local autonomy is absolute. It's messier than an empire, but it's also more stable. And more attractive to potential new members, Zarahai realized. Exactly. We've found that people are much more willing to join a federation than to be conquered by an empire. Voluntary association creates stronger bonds than forced submission. As the images faded, Zarahai understood that the revelation of human military power was only the beginning. Humanity hadn't just built a hidden fleet, they had created an entirely new model of interstellar civilization, one that might prove far more attractive to other species than the traditional empire-building approach that had dominated the galaxy for millennia. Is that the real reason for this marriage? She asked. To demonstrate the benefits of cooperation over conquest? It's one reason, Marcus admitted, but not the primary one. The primary reason is that I fell in love with a remarkable princess who sees possibilities where others see only problems. A soft chime from Marcus's communication device interrupted their conversation. Commander Mitchell's voice followed immediately. Marcus, we're receiving priority communications from Earth Command. Intelligence reports indicate massive fleet movements from 3 different empires. It appears our revelation has triggered exactly the response we anticipated. Marcus sighed. How much time do we have? Best estimate, 6 months before someone makes a move against either Earth or Velthar Prime. Possibly less. Zarahai felt her scales shift to combat readiness colors automatically. 6 months to prepare for a war that could reshape the galaxy. 6 months to prove that cooperation could triumph over conquest. "Then we'd better make those 6 months count," she said firmly. Marcus looked at her with an expression that combined love, admiration, and determination. "Together?" "Together," she confirmed. As they walked back toward the palace to begin planning for an uncertain future, Zarahai reflected on how much her life had changed in just a few weeks. She had married what she thought was a harmless human diplomat and discovered she had actually allied herself with one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. But more than that, she had found a partner who shared her vision of what the galaxy could become. Not a collection of empires constantly warring for dominance, but a community of diverse species working together toward common goals. The war that was coming would test that vision, but for the first time in her life, Zarahai felt genuinely optimistic about the future. Humanity had spent 2 centuries preparing for this moment. Now it was time to see if their patient planning would be enough to create a new kind of galactic civilization. As they entered the palace, already filled with advisors and military officers preparing for the challenges ahead, Zarahai smiled. Whatever came next, she and Marcus would face it together. And with the combined strength of humanity and the Veltharian Empire behind them, she liked their chances. The age of secrets was ending. The age of cooperation was about to begin, when word of this demonstration spread. One thing was certain: the age of human secrecy was ending. The age of human influence was about to begin.